All right. Good afternoon, Cagesiders. This is Sean Rueter here with a couple of guests. One we haven't seen on the Cageside Airwaves in a while. I don't think Keith Harris has joined us since his Linda McMahon senatorial coverage. So Keith is joining us from across the pond, and our truly special guest coming to us from Los Angeles is a couple of epic Ring of Honor title runs, still working with that company as a matchmaker and authority figure. And a lot of folks may have, even if you don't know him, you are familiar with names that he has worked with and helped make famous, like CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Samoa Joe, Seth Rollins, and more. One of my favorite feuds in TNA ever when he debuted and worked with Kurt Angle. He worked with Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan down there. He's got a great documentary that I know we just publicized over the weekend. It was available for free, so please, welcome me. Well, help me welcome Nigel McGuinness to Cageside Seats.
Nice to be here. To be here.
Thank you for being here.
There we go. You've got that. That was a shout out to Bruce Forsyth. It's an old TV show in England. But there you go.
All right, so I'm sure half of our audience got that, even if I didn't. So it's all good. Well, thank you for reaching. Nigel actually reached out to us about doing this. He's got a very cool new project that he's trying to get off the ground. So we wanted to, take this opportunity to talk to somebody who has entertained us a lot over the years and try to get some buzz going on his project. So how are things out there in California, Mr. McGuinness?
They're lovely. I'm looking out the window now, blue skies and sunshine. I was going to go surfing yesterday. I try and go surfing every weekend I'm here. But I was so busy online. I mean, with this project, I've just been plugging it to death. Honestly, I feel like a prostitute every day, every hour I'm on there. Tweet, retweet, post, share. It's just, this is the world that we live in, as you know now. There's so much noise out there in social media. You can't just put a tweet out and expect even half of your feed or your followers to see it. You have to fucking plug it to death. And it's a shame because people who are on there all the time hear the same thing again and again and again, So you have to try and be varied in what you say. You have to try and say interesting things. I remember going to Cauliflower Alley about 2 or 3 years ago, which is an old school veteran sort of get together in Vegas every year. And Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins was doing a seminar there about social media. And he was talking about it's not the number of followers you have, it's the number of followers that listen to what you're saying and move the needle depending on what you're saying. And to do that, he said he always felt he had to play the heel. You can't just say, hey, check out my new project, because everybody is doing that. You have to try and say something controversial, something interesting. People will actually pay attention to what you're saying. So I try and find, a happy medium between the two, because I don't want to be flaming or be controversial just for the sake of it. But you do have to stand out in this world.
Absolutely. In our business these days, I think you just have to say CM Punk, and then it triples our hits. But yeah, I don't know how that's going to work for you, so that probably doesn't help you at all. So what have you found? I mean, what has been the hook so far? What do you think is getting people more interested than other things?
I mean, I think the fact that I'm facing any sort of concerns that people have with backing face on, some people just put a Kickstarter out, do a video, and then just sit back and, like Scrooge McDuck, and wait for all the money to come in. And obviously it doesn't happen like that. What you have to do, as I said, is just keep pushing and keep promoting and sort of use this. And that's really what Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms are for. They're sort of to figure out what the market is for any specific product and any sort of problems with that product. And I've tried to address them. I did the Reddit AMA just now this morning and I think the problems largely are we live in an age now where, crowdfunding has kind of jumped the shark. If you look on your Facebook feed, every day there's a new project that's up there asking for money for this, that, or the other. People are kind of over it. It's not like 3 years ago where it was new and exciting and, oh, wow, I can really make something cool happen now. And I, to a certain extent, I tried to sort of maybe even steer away from Kickstarter specifically itself, but at the end of the day, I felt it was better the devil you know than using a new site I didn't really necessarily have faith in was going to work out 100% perfectly. So I think that's one of the issues, but nonetheless, I tried to address that by showing that, ultimately it still is the only way for small independent artists to get their vision out there as their vision, without being beholden to a big production company where they're going to bring people in and say, yeah, we like it, but you need more snakes, or you need more to get into, and then beyond that, even the in-ring style, I think, can be closer to MMA now. It can be more realistic. I mean, you mentioned CM Punk there. He's now transitioning into MMA to where, you know, we're going to hopefully be able to see that there will be some crossover, and I think that a scripted product that draws liberally from both, I don't want to say art forms, but both genres can certainly appeal to the masses. So I've been working on this extensively for a year, and even in my head for like 5 years before that. Put a lot of work into it, and I really believe it's a great concept that, if funded, can have a profound effect on the industry.
Awesome. So give us a little bit more background. I mean, you've given us a lot there to chew on, but what's your synopsis pitch for what LA, if we get LA fights, hopefully we will through the Kickstarter, what will it end up looking like?
The log line is a group of amateur fighters struggle to coexist with their morally ambivalent promoter in their upstart LA-based fight league, you know, which is kind of a mouthful, but it really is a simple concept in the sense of, I imagined it in reality. We live in an age now where a lot of people who are pro wrestlers are kind of, you know, they're kind of almost ambivalent about getting to WWE because, you know, we've kind of been in this stage in the mainstream product where it hasn't really evolved in the last 10 or 15 years, you know, like companies like Ring of Honor and Pro Wrestling Guerrilla are doing new, interesting, different things, but on a grand mainstream level, it still hasn't evolved on that level, you know what I mean? And so I think in my universe, as I'm envisioning that, a lot of sort of wrestlers, much like CM Punk, who've had their run in pro wrestling, are thinking about getting into MMA, and in this universe, they get together once a week and have this promotion where they legitimately get in the ring and have fights, and they're not the most seasoned amateur fighters necessarily, which means that when they get in the ring and they fight, it's more entertaining because they don't fight from a defensive standpoint. Coming from a pro wrestling background, they know they have to make this entertaining. So they may hit the ropes and try and throw a drop kick, but the guy's not going to stand there and get kicked in the face and fall flat on his back because that's not reality. I'm trying to get closer to reality, you know. If it could happen in reality, it will happen in LA fights. And I think there's a great spectrum for what can be done within evolving the in-ring style in that direction.
Interesting. Okay, I think we got some more on in-ring style we want to get to, but I did want to also touch base with, you know, we mentioned CM Punk. What is it that you mentioned, that the importance of doing this through Kickstarter so that there weren't people who were going to put, you know, demand that you put werewolves and snakes in it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, is there anything else? Is that the primary reason that, you know, that another company couldn't transition to this kind of product? Somebody like ROH, or I mean, I think we know the problems with WWE, but if TNA was serious about restarting things, could they do it, or is there other benefits to coming from the outside?
You know, the truth is, part of the evolution that I'm suggesting here is a change to the seasonal format, much like you've seen with that show Lucha Underground.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, whether it's pro wrestling or whether it's a show like Breaking Bad, you can't do it 52 weeks a year. You just can't write that much good TV, you know. And my theory is that we live in an age now where people get their entertainment in a different way, you know, when they binge watch their shows on platforms like Netflix or Hulu, and there isn't necessarily a wrestling product which fits that market, and I think it's wide open for it. So could WWE or TNA do it? Perhaps not on the scale that they're doing now, but I think that, and this is certainly the goal, much like with ECW in the late 1990s, it could influence the major companies to where they can pick up certain things which fit within their business model. This isn't about competition. This is about showing that, you know, even a product like Breaking Bad, it appeals to people from every demographic. People can watch it and go, oh, there's this guy, and, you know, he's having to sell meth because he's got cancer. And there's, you know, people that go, wow, there's all these different intricacies of the relationships and how he loves his family so much, but, you know, he feels that he has to do that to support them, yeah, but in the end it's going to end terribly. You know, it's like Shakespeare, if you will. It can be done within a pro wrestling genre. I absolutely believe it, but there are certain limitations with doing it 52 weeks a year, and I believe that if you go to a seasonal structure, you have more opportunities. And, you know, I mean, the reality is the more I talk about this, the more that people do talk about this, perhaps the more likely people are to try something. You know, I think at least, you know, the thing that kind of helps me is that not a lot of people really want to touch pro wrestling now because it is at least to the mainstream media, it's no longer water cooler talk. Now everybody's talking about MMA. And I think pitching the show as an MMA show would be a far easier pitch to, like private investors, whereas obviously my fan base is pro wrestling, and I'm coming at this from an evolution of pro wrestling because that's what I've learned the last 10 or 15 years of my life.
Absolutely.
So speaking of like rival promotions, you've been very explicit that LA Fights isn't designed to compete with other companies. So are you hopeful that you may be able to use wrestlers from other groups like Ring of Honor in your project and create some cross-promotional synergy?
I would certainly hope to be able to use some guys from Ring of Honor or any other company that's out there because, I still believe that Ring of Honor has some of the best wrestlers in the world. As far as cross-promotion goes, it's kind of two different universes, I think, in that sense. Ring of Honor lives within the real world, and LA Fights will live within the scripted show, perhaps. Maybe it's like a show like Louis C.K.'s show, to where he used other comedians on the show in some way, shape, or form. I wouldn't be necessarily giving people new names. I don't believe that you have to recreate people necessarily, but at the same time, a lot of the main characters will have pretty strong characters and backgrounds, and people have to be comfortable with that being sort of presented as themselves.
Sounds good. Yeah. So, do you find that you mentioned Lucha Underground, which I think is I don't know how much if you've had a chance to watch the product at all, but it sounds kind of similar. Although I think you're going more for sort of a prestige drama angle, where they're more sort of like a grindhouse action flick with some of the backstage stuff and the setup for the fights.
Yeah.
Would you see? Do you have a cast in mind for LA Fights?
I have a few people. There's a few roles which would be non-physical. That I have a couple of actors that I have in mind for it. In terms of the actual wrestlers themselves, I have a few people in mind. But it's a twofold thing, really, in the sense that if you're going to be participating physically on the show, you have to be able to sort of wrestle that style. Now, you can certainly learn, and at the same time, if you can't wrestle that style, we can still put you in the ring and show that you can't wrestle that style, and as long as it remains true to reality, it still works, and there's nothing wrong with that, with having a guy out there that just really is in over his head and he gets murdered, as long as he gets murdered at the end of it. But at the same time, just as important is that people have their acting chops. And part of my theory behind this has always been the case is that pro wrestlers aren't actors. I've always believed we're not actors, and we don't need to be actors, because as you've seen from any documentary about behind the scenes in pro wrestling, we all have our own storylines that are as engaging as any of the storylines that people create them, at least on a mainstream level. Whether it's drug abuse or sexuality or ambition versus family, all these different things that are there in real life, as long as people can really emote, that's the idea, and let that side of their real personalities come out on camera, then we're on to a winner. And that's my goal, is to cast people in roles that really aren't that different than who they really are. And to that end, in terms of writing the script, I had a lot of help from Jimmy Jacobs in some of the storylines that I really wasn't familiar from, because I didn't have my own sort of personal experience to make it a little bit more genuine in that regard.
Interesting. Okay. So do you see? I find it's interesting that you don't consider wrestlers actors, which I think. I guess that some of us have been trained so much on the sports entertainment angle that we think of people as that's the natural crossover. But I guess obviously wrestlers are storytellers, but it's interesting to hear that they're
No, what I mean by that is we are absolutely actors, 100% actors, but we're not good actors. We can't pretend to be things we're not.
Right.
And that is the definition of a good actor, is someone that can play this character and play someone categorically different. And I don't think there are many wrestlers that can do that, because we're not classically trained actors.
Right.
What we are is passionate, and what we are is able to emote and get our true selves out there. And that, I think, is why we all want to be wrestlers, because we want to have that that forum to do that.
And that's like I don't know who originally said it, but the notion that the best wrestling characters are the real guys with the volume turned up on them.
Absolutely, turned up to 11.
There you go.
It goes all
this
the way
one goes to 11. Yes, indeed.
Didn't get that, I don't think. Spinal Tap, you never saw that?
That's
yeah, I should do. I really should.
He's too
Where
young.
I got my name from. There you go.
That. As long as you're not the drummer, you'll be all right. Keith, did you have another question here, or?
Well, I've got quite a few.
Well, fire away.
So I think touching on the scripted aspect of LA Fights, one of the main criticisms today of WWE is that promos are too heavily scripted, which can stifle a performer's creativity. Right. So, how much ad-lib will there be wiggle room for performers to ad-lib in your project? Yeah, so
word for word, there will be a lot. In the sense of, I don't believe I can put words in wrestlers' mouths, and I don't think you should. What I've done in writing the script is I put in placeholders. Much like with any good script, I've tried to find every individual character's voice. But when people get cast in it, it may, need some amendment, and I'll basically say this is what we're trying to get. There'll be a lot of ad lib. It will be a lot of like, okay, this is your backstory, this is your character, this is where you are in the scene, this is what you want out of this scene. But we need to get this done in a certain amount of time. I think that's a problem a lot of time, is that within pro wrestling promos, people love to use these non sequiturs, and it's like, I don't know if you feel the same way I do, but, and we don't need that sentence. Let's just get into the fucking meat of it, you know what I mean? And so it will be a steep learning curve, I think, for a lot of the wrestlers, me included, because part of the show is me being on the show in front of the camera as well as behind it. But that's why I'm excited about it, because it really will give guys the chance to develop their chops, so to speak, and get their emotion out there.
Okay. I was curious. So I think I saw in the AMA that the idea would be that these would be about 44-minute episodes that would fit into a 60-minute with commercial slot if it did make it to a television distribution model.
Right.
Would each episode have like a conflict that gets resolved in that episode, or would they all be serial throughout the season or the series?
I think largely the character arcs and the storylines evolve throughout the series. It's not like I don't think they're really necessarily standalone episodes.
Okay.
Dukes of Hazzard or any of those shows from us. Jesus, we're getting some.
We're showing our age here, Nigel. I don't know. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but I think we're dating ourselves.
Oh, Baywatch. But again, I think we live in a world now where people do want to go from one episode to the next. And again, I'm relatively new to this in the sense that I've written a couple of screenplays, and I've talked to people that do write for a living that say I'm pretty good at what I'm doing. But it's not going to be perfect. What it will be is so different and so exciting and so new that it really will show people what is possible within the genre.
Excellent. Okay, so I wanted to. I saw that you've covered it, and you covered it actually in our intro. I was going to ask you about the Jeff Katz project, but I think you've addressed that. I mean, do you have any insight into what went wrong there? I know you knew some people that worked on that.
I mean,
without airing dirty laundry, but I mean the specific things that might have fallen apart.
But funnily enough, I was just talking with Joey Ryan last night at the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood show. And he reached out to me today and said, if I was interested, he'd be more than happy to sort of explain his experience with the company and how he feels like my new project is different and why mine will succeed. So I think people who were that heavily involved would probably be the best people to ask about this. Again, I can't comment about something that I didn't have any kind of control over in that way. I certainly share everybody's disappointment with it. I think it's a real shame. I think anybody that was involved in it will do so as well. And without knowing exactly what happened behind the scenes and what ended up stopping it becoming a reality, it's difficult to comment. it is just a shame that, you know, it does have a negative effect on some of the people that did put their hard-earned money into it, you know, and just all I can do is implore people that take a look at my history, what I did with my first Kickstarter, and, you know, there's no way I would let people down. That's why I put so much work into this. That's why I'm asking for 370, because, you know, I'm not just going to throw out a figure and guess and go, you know what, I reckon I could make it for that, because then it won't happen, you know, and I'm not willing to risk my reputation on that. You know, if I can't get the money to make it, then it won't be made, and that's just the reality of it. You know, I want to say here's an opportunity, because nothing I'm doing here, boys, is categorically new in and of itself. Like any of these individual aspects, everybody's probably thought of themselves. Everybody's probably thought, you know what, why can't wrestling be a little bit more realistic? You know, why can't we get away from some of the, you know, sleeper hold, arm drops twice and he comes back to life, you know, that sort of stuff. And people have thought, why can't storylines be a little bit closer to the stuff that we see in shows like Breaking Bad or something, whatever else it happens to be. But you know, to put all those aspects together into one clear, concise package, put a price tag on that and say, okay, this is it. If I get the money, I can make this a reality. That takes a lot of work, and I'm not sure if anybody else has done it up to this point.
Fair enough. I do think, I mean, I think your track record, that's probably your best response to those questions. It's interesting that you mentioned talking to Joey Ryan, because I think one of the things that people were really excited about seeing out of that project was, you know, his performance as a wrestler who came out. And I know that you've said that that's one of the themes that you'll explore in LA Fights. So
right.
that's and I know, I guess, I mean, there's others too. I mean, what else? I mean, in a nutshell, I mean, give us some teasers. I know you've got a rich history yourself, and I know you're going to be a performer in this. So, I mean, what other?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be touching on the concussion issue certainly, and the issue of, you know, not being able to step away when perhaps physically you should.
Okay.
The drug abuse, you know, painkiller addiction is something that is, you know, certainly has been rife in the history of pro wrestling. I know at least a decade ago. Thankfully, it's not quite so bad as it was back then. And then the whole notion of ambition, the whole notion of, you know, how a lot of people's families, wives, etc., want them to just sort of quit and stay home and get a regular job. But if they keep doing this, perhaps if it becomes successful, then they can achieve their dream. But how much are they willing to risk their family and their friendships and the people that love them to achieve that? You know, it's not a simple topic. There's no right or wrong, and you can find on either side. And I think that's the most engaging storylines.
Absolutely. I mean, as you tackle things like drug abuse and concussion awareness and things like that, do you worry about any pushback from the industry, from people who are trying to, you know, say we've moved past that and don't want to draw attention to it?
I don't think so, because I don't think it will reflect that way necessarily on the wrestling industry, again, because this is a scripted show that is in a different universe entirely than the promotions that exist currently. And, you know, the rabbit's out of the hat, let's be honest. I mean, you know, wrestlers use painkillers? Oh my God, that's insane, you know? This isn't news to anybody, you know. It certainly is better than it used to be, and I think if we can present it in a more realistic and genuine and open-minded way, then I think people will get a different take on it. You know, it's not about drugs are bad or drugs are great. It's about people do take drugs, and why do they do it, and what negative effects can it have on its life, and what personal responsibility do people have? Do people have the choice to do what they want? I mean, these are big questions that are important within society beyond just pro wrestling, and I think pro wrestling is a great avenue to explore them.
Interesting. Yeah. So on the back to the style a little bit, the MMA influenced style, is that what percentage of shows did you see? I mean, one complaint that people have about, say, a WWE product is that there's not enough wrestling. So yeah. What percentage do you see being like the in-ring work, and do you see that? Do you think that would be a problem?
It could be. I mean, I'll be honest. If someone wants to watch a pro wrestling show like the good old-fashioned days where it was largely all pro wrestling and not so much behind the scenes, then this product isn't going to be for you. You know, it's, to me, I feel that we live in an age now where people have even shorter attention spans than ever. and that, you know, people want entertainment there, you know, again and again and again. And my feeling is that if you can give them a product which is more realistic and you care about the character, and I tell you this, I remember it was WrestleMania weekend a few years ago, and I forget now when it was exactly, but before the Ring of Honor show, Shelton Benjamin and Michael Elgin got in the ring beforehand, but the whole goal of the purpose of this was to see whether Michael Elgin could take Shelton Benjamin off his feet. And that was it, legitimately, as a contest. And everybody, every single person in that arena was watching, glued to their seats. Now, if they'd been in there, like, you know, practicing a match or whatever else, no one would have given a shit about it. But because they believed this was real, because they knew the outcome was significantly important, they were paying attention. So I've realised that the in-ring product, as long as you back it up with characters that you genuinely care about, as long as you make the outcome of the matches important to where it has repercussions, people will watch fucking thumb wrestling, as long as that's the case.
I agree. I mean, I think most of our, I can only speak for myself personally, but most of my favorite feuds are the ones where I cared passionately about one guy or the other, or both guys,
right,
or the outcome of the conflict. So, I mean, I think that's storytelling 101. So I'll watch that. Go ahead, Keith.
Where the wrestlers, like, you know, showed to the fans that they really cared about the outcome themselves. Because I think too often, maybe in modern wrestling, you know, you have like wrestlers don't care about losing the title because they're worried that, you know, John Cena might look like a whiner or a complainer or a moaner if he complains about being screwed out of the title. So
yeah, I mean, again, you know, you mentioned something. The word you said there that was really important was screwed out of the title, you know. I mean, again, that speaks about storylines, because he's a babyface, therefore he only ever lost the title because he was screwed out of the title. And again, I think that's sophomoric. Now, I do have to give him credit, and I didn't see this myself, but from what I'm led to believe, he had a match with Brock Lesnar where Lesnar actually just beat him up and beat him. Was that right?
Yes. Yep.
That's right. Yep.
Right. So, you know, and I've got to applaud it when I see it, you know, trying something different and telling a different story. You know, and again, I hope this isn't being positioned as me burying any of the current product. I mean, I just believe there certainly is a huge gap in the market for something new and something different. I have no idea how difficult it is to work for a company like Ring of Honor, or excuse me, for WWE, where you have so many people that have say-so and influence. You have so many different hats to wear and so many different people to please. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in that situation. That's why I feel like this avenue gives us complete carte blanche to do something new and exciting within the industry.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to blame anyone in particular, because we just see the final product. We don't know who's responsible for the decisions, and most cases it's not the wrestlers themselves. So yeah. I'd just say that.
Yeah. Where was I? Where was I? There was something I was going to ask you based off of that, and it completely just slipped my mind. But one thing, I think this was, just staying on the wrestling style for a little bit. I mean, you've mentioned the crossover appeal of MMA. Are you worried about the pro wrestling? Because I think one thing is that I think that a lot of the internet wrestling fans, our community, the folks that read Cageside Seats, do it. I mean, they're not bashing WWE. We still watch it. We watch Ring of Honor. We watch TNA. But a lot of us are clamoring for a different kind of product that it sounds like this could fit into. Are you worried that the MMA influence pitch is going to just scare some of those folks off?
It could do. I've heard people say, you know, if people want to watch MMA, they'll watch UFC. But I don't believe that's the case. I think if you look at guys like Dragon, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish, there's a lot of guys now who are employing portions of MMA and evolving pro wrestling in that direction. You know, look at what Dragon did with some of the moves that he used. He used the triangle to great effect, and even his omoplata. You know, what did he call it? The bell lock or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know, even that, it really got over. You know, the question is, how far can you push things in that direction, you know, to still be entertaining and digestible by the masses, yet not be, you know, kind of fake and phony and sort of sticking to a lot of the same sort of structure that people have used in pro wrestling, arguably, for the last 30 years.
Interesting. So, and what about another big topic these days is specifically coming off of the CM Punk podcast with Cabana is wrestler health and the concussion issues and stuff that you can certainly speak to from you know, Last of McGuinness and your experiences in the business for the last decade. Is this style that you're going to be bringing to us with LA Fights? Do you feel that's a safer style? Is that one of the benefits of it?
100%, and that's part of me actually being a wrestler on the show, is that, you know, I don't believe, this is going to sound crazy, I don't believe in taking bumps. Because if you watch a professional fight, you ever see someone take a bump? It never happens.
Right.
No one falls flat on their back. You know, it just doesn't happen anymore. Now, when they get knocked out, yeah, they fall over. You've seen how they fall. They fall and they're out cold on the way down. They're like a tree, bonk, and they're out. And then they're out, and they don't get back up. And
right.
The match is over, you know. So this notion of like taking 2 steps forward and falling flat on your face and then you carry on with the match, it just doesn't work in today's world. I totally believe that. Now, as pro wrestling fans, you can look at it within a certain genre, and you can go, you know what, this is its own individual art form, and I get that 100%. You know, I think if you look at lucha, you look at other styles, you can say, well, it doesn't really look real, but it entertains plenty of people, and that's fine, and I've got nothing wrong with that whatsoever. What I'm trying to do is appeal to the people that can't watch that, because I believe there's a huge market out there that won't watch wrestling anymore just because of that reason. And the people that do watch wrestling, they'll still watch it, because I guarantee you, if it's entertaining, it's entertaining. Jimmy Jacobs said it's perfect. It's good wrestling or it's bad wrestling. That's all there is to it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Whether it's a TV or a movie or whatever else, you either enjoy it and it takes you out, or it doesn't, and you know, you can't suspend your disbelief. And I believe the line has changed categorically since the evolution of MMA to where now people have a different expectation for realism.
Okay. Yeah, so transitioning again topics a little bit, is I know right now you're actually, in addition to your work on screen with Ring of Honor, you're also working behind the scenes in Hollywood, correct?
Yeah, I've got a job as an assistant editor on a True TV hidden camera magic show called The Carbonaro Effect, which is fantastic. I tell you, it's the best job I ever had.
Awesome.
I'm assistant editor, so I help import the footage. I group it all, give it to the actual editors to edit and stuff, and then I help up-res it and export it and do everything else I have behind the scenes. I'm a bit of an amateur magician myself, so it's great to be involved with a show that I have an interest in personally as well. And I love it. I mean, I love it. I love living out here. I feel totally blessed in my life. I wrote my blog this past Sunday. I write a blog every Sunday night on nigelwrestling.com, my website. And this weekend I wrote about seeing the last shows of Louis Keith's CK show, and I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it, you want to watch it, I should probably put fingers in your ears now. But towards the end of the last series, he has the opportunity to get Dave Letterman's spot on his main show, and after overcoming some obstacles, he has a great test performance on the show, and then unfortunately doesn't get it because they decide to go back to Dave Letterman because they use him as leverage to get Dave to drop his money. Comes to this resolution that he was good enough, and that in and of itself is okay. And there's a scene of him stood outside the Ed Sullivan Theatre screaming in triumph, saying, I was good enough, I did it. And that sort of gave me that sense of peace with what I'm doing here, you know, because I know 370 grand is a huge amount of money. There's no doubt about that. But I know that I've given this my best shot, you know, and I know my dad always used to say to me that as long as you give something your best shot, you can hold your head up high and be proud that whether it works out or not, you did your absolute best, and that's all you can do. It's all anybody can ever ask of you. So that's what I've done. I'm going to keep doing this every day, get on social media, pushing it. I've put the documentary out there for free so people can see what I'm capable of. And I just hope people get behind it as much as I care about it, you know. But either way, I really do believe I've created something different and interesting here that I'm proud of. And in some way, shape or form, I have to see it a reality.
Absolutely, and that's and so the Kickstarter is accessible from LAfights.com, correct?
Yeah, if you go to LAfights.com, that'll take you straight to the Kickstarter. Follow me on Twitter at McGuinness Nigel. I'm on Facebook as well. You can check out my Reddit thing. I've been plugging that all over the place as well. I'm going to go on there later on tonight as well. And the movie will be available until the end of Raw tonight. So if you are watching and you like it, please tweet out the link. Again, it's on my Twitter feed at McGuinness Nigel. Just hashtag Raw, hashtag LA Fights, and let's get people talking about this. You know, I really think that it could be something special.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds, like I said, it sounds like something that I want to see. I mean, you're passionate about it, and it sounds like it could fill this niche that I know that Keith and I know that the community is asking for. So, you know, I'm going to throw a few dollars your way. I don't know how much I got as a lonely part-time internet blogger, but we will spread the word and definitely try to see where this comes from, where this can take us.
Thank you, Sean. You know, it really is. Every little bit helps. You know, like a couple of people donated $1, you know, and people may laugh at that, but not at all. You know, going to the effort of signing up and putting, you know, taking money from your pocket and into this project, you know, I appreciate $1 as much as $500. You know, I really do. And people that even can't afford that, talking about it, pushing it, and trying to get other people to talk about it and to start a discussion. That's what I want to do. I want to start a discussion and say, look, what can be done within this genre? We all love this. There's no doubt that we love it. You know, what can be done? Where can we go with this? What are we capable of producing? You know, that's the conversation I want to start, and I hope that this has done that.
I think it's a good start. So folks can go check out. So what's the time period on the Kickstarter? It's through the end of January?
It runs out at the end of January, yep. So we've got about 40 days left or something like that. We're behind pace. We're up to about 15 grand so far. But thus far, it's largely been the smaller reward levels. The reality of the situation is that to reach a level like 370, we are going to need some pretty big backers to get behind it, some people with a little bit of spare change that want to get behind this and see something different, you know. So, like I said, that's why it's so important to tweet this out and get it out there, because I know there are people out there with money that are fans of pro wrestling or fans of MMA that would really love this product, you know, and we need to get them on board as well to make this into a reality, you know. So that's it. It's a big goal, guys. But I believe, you know, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. You got to swing for the trees. That's it. I could have said, you know what, I'm just going to try and get a job for WWE or do something, you know, put my own little input in this company or that company. But I didn't want to do that. You know, I felt like I really had something here that was special, and I had to do it. I had to put it out there. I know I'm going to risk people sort of criticizing it and saying it's a stupid idea. It won't work for this reason. It won't work for that reason. But they said that about everything else in the past, and, you know, some people have got to try it. You've got to give it a shot.
Absolutely. And the fans that are, you know, that watch Final Battle and they're hoping that you and Ciampa are going to square off in the ring, that's, if they want to see you in the ring, they got to fund this, right?
Yeah. If they want to see me back in the ring, this is the only way it's going to be. I mean, I may thumb wrestle with Ciampa, but I don't want to take those knees to the head. I've got enough concussions.
There you go. All right. Well, so it's at McGuinness Nigel, and that's 2 N's and 2 S's if you're like me and you have to look it up every time you have to type it. And it's NigelWrestling.com, and it's LAFights.com.
That is correct.
And that is all of our particulars. So I wish you the best, my friend. I thank you for the time here. And I hope we can get some buzz going for you, and you know, hopefully we'll touch base with you in about a month, and we'll talk about what the rollout plans, because we funded this thing.
Awesome, I hope so. Let's touch base in the new year and see where we are anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.